Welcome back, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started with our next session. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you, Mary. And morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Jardine. I'm Chief Operating Officer for the National Manufacturing Institute in Scotland. And I'm going to talk to you about almost 30 years in manufacturing and lessons learned using the Shingo Model. So just to give you a quick idea about my journey and my background, I went to University of Strathclyde in 1988 and then Heriot-Watt University in 1992 to do a master's. Both of those were in laser physics and optoelectronics. If you have any trouble imagining what that looks like, just go watch an episode of Big Bang Theory and you'll see that was my life. After I left university, I went to work in the defence industry for Thales for a few years, designing target designators and laser rangefinders, and moving from design and development and transferring to manufacture. In 2000, I got an opportunity to work for what was then a small startup company called Optos in Dunfermline, and they design, develop and manufacture ultrawide field scanning laser ophthalmoscopes. I thought I would only be there for a couple of years. It turns out I was there for 20 years. And in that time, I also had the privilege of representing Scottish manufacturing on the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service Board. And in 2015, I was chair of the board until I left Optos at the end of 2019. In January 2020, I started working for the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, and I have been there since January last year, which has probably been almost the weirdest 2 years of my life, given that it's a pandemic and everything. The National Manufacturing Institute, I first read about it as part of the programme for government. The Scottish Government issued a publication, A Manufacturing Future for Scotland, and it talked, one sentence in there, it talked about a joint centre for manufacturing excellence and for skills academy. And I read that and I thought, who wouldn't want to be part of that? And in 2020, I had the privilege of being appointed as the Chief Operating Officer. So you can all read that. I'm not going to read that out for you, but I've highlighted in terms of what is in this, the parts that are important to me. It's about working together to transform skills, productivity and innovation to make Scotland a global leader in advanced manufacturing. It's an opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, to make a difference to people that I work with, but also in our manufacturing community here in Scotland and also in the wider global manufacturing community. And I'm delighted to be able to have that chance to do that. So that's where I am now, but I'm going to talk to you today about where my Shingo journey began and mistakes that I made. I find that it's better to, I learn more from hearing what other people did wrong and learning from their mistakes. So I'll share mistakes that I made and also lessons that I learned that hopefully help any of you that are in the start of your Shingo journey as well. So how it all started, in October 2009, I was plant manager for Optos in Dunfermline. I previously manufactured a research and development team there. And we had a new Chief Operating Officer and he was based in the US and he'd used the Shingo model before. So the first part of that job, I went to the 5th annual Northeast Shingo Prize Conference in Boston. And that conference changed my life. And it's not, I don't say that lightly, it really did. I heard people talk about a war on waste. I heard people talk about being really engaged in manufacturing, all the improvements that people could make. And I listened to different speakers talk for 2 days. I heard the governor of the prisons in Florida talk about using the Shingo model within the prison system, as well as hearing all these other organisations talk about how they used it in manufacturing. And I left clutching my copy of The Machine That Changed the World. I had met the Bruce Hamilton, the toast guy. And to be perfectly honest, at the end of that conference, if they'd said at the end you need to line up to get the conference tattoo, I would have been there at the front of the queue. I was completely hooked. I was completely caught up in the feeling that they gave us that manufacturing actually could be an exciting and innovative place to work. But what happened when I got home? I left that environment of really engaged bunch of people who were all high-fiving each other. I didn't go home to Boston or Chicago or any of those places. I came home to Scotland. I don't know how much any of you know about Scotland, but Scotland's the only place in the world where two positives actually make a negative. We have a phrase here, I write. And when you look at that phrase and have its literal translation, that literal translation is yes, okay. So when I came back and talked to my team here about using the Shingo model and being really excited, and I got the I write, that many people would think that was okay. But here in Scotland, what that actually means is definitely no way. I'll not be doing that, that kind of thing. Or, more politely, I don't subscribe to your point of view, and therefore I won't be participating in anything that you suggest. So how do we overcome that reticence to adopt anything new? How did I go about trying to get that enthusiasm for change, that enthusiasm for continuous improvement within my organisation? And what I realised was at that conference, nobody told me where to start. They all told me about the changes that they'd made, the difference that they'd made, but nobody said, if this is your first time, when you go back to your facility, this is the thing that you should do. So I had to look at what do we normally do when we go to introduce something new. We maybe start a project, we have an initiative or a program, we create a strategy for it, and we look at our structure and think, do we need to restructure in order to support this? But when I was at that conference, the thing that I learned was that, those words, project, initiative, program, they're temporary words. They're something that has a beginning and an end. This is a cultural change that we want to make. So this is something that has a beginning, but it doesn't have an end. So I wasn't going to do any of those things. And then, I was reminded of Peter Drucker, the management consultant, who says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And he doesn't mean don't have a strategy. He means that no matter how good your strategy is, if you don't have the right culture in your organization, your strategy will fail. So if we start from the position that we didn't have the right culture in our organization, a strategy wasn't the right thing. And the same would be true for structure. If it was having strategy for breakfast, it was going to have structure for lunch if you didn't have the right culture in your organization. So with all those normal things that you would normally do when we come back from something a hear about these great ideas, what was it that I needed to do? And I thought back and listened to those organizations, and what they all had was a burning platform. So I thought, well, I need to get me one of those then. But how do you create a burning platform if you don't already have one? How do you create a burning platform in an organization that's making money and producing product? An organization that actually had no direct competitors anywhere in the world? Where's the imperative for that organization to change? So like other people have talked about this morning, I went back to the guiding principles of the Shingo Model, where we learn about, behaviours, we learn about ideal results require ideal behaviours, and that principles drive those ideal behaviours. And fortunately, the Shingo Model actually shows us examples of ideal behaviours within organisations, and I've just popped some up on the screen there. So if those principles drive the ideal behaviours and ideal results come from ideal behaviours, I had to look in my organisation to see were any of those ideal behaviours visible. So for example, looking at creating long-term solutions rather than temporary fixes, my organisation loved a quick fix. It's all we had time for. We had fires burning everywhere. So we sorted something to stop that fire from burning just now, but not to stop it igniting again. Encouraging employees to explore new ideas without fear of failure. So I was new in my job. The previous incumbent in my role blamed people, not processes, which is the other thing that the model talks about. So why were they going to trust me when they didn't trust the previous person in that role? And ensuring that everything meets specification before we use them in a process, that was one of our biggest challenges. Parts didn't meet specification, and we thought because nobody made what we made and we had no direct competitors, because what we did was really difficult, that was just how it was because it was difficult to do. One of the things that we didn't do was we didn't have more product than we required to meet customer demand, because the reality was we couldn't make it. The reality was that we were making 2.5 devices in order to get one successfully installed in a customer organization. So those things should be the burning platform. But what was it that we actually took to try and develop that burning platform? We actually looked at working to understand our customers' needs and expectations. And to start off with, I asked my team the question, well, how do we see ourselves? So we did the normal operations thing of getting out a whole load of Post-its and writing down on the Post-it, how did we see ourselves? And we collated those. And the answers that we came up with made absolutely terrible reading. If you read what we wrote about ourselves, that's a terrible place to work, with everything late, everything on back order, things being unreliable, no flow in production, nothing was flexible, all those type of things. And just to give you an idea of the levels of WIP and scrap, when I took over in that role, we had $43 million worth of excess and obsolete stock. So the mountain was huge to climb. And not only is that how we saw ourselves, this was actually the environment that we thought it was okay to work in. That top left-hand picture there is how our world-class medical device manufacturing shop floor looked like. Our office space was untidy. We stored stuff outside. We actually built that shelter to protect those boxes from the rain, because if you don't know, it rains in Scotland quite a lot. The bottom right-hand picture and the middle picture, those two booths actually ran the same manufacturing process, but you weren't able to tell from just looking at them. And the bottom left-hand picture there was an attempt at some level of standardization. But when we standardized things, we made them inflexible. So it didn't look like a good place to work, and it didn't feel like a good place to work. But there we had our burning platform. So once we'd established that burning platform, and we had also then created a vision of tomorrow. So we said how it was, that was yesterday. This is where we want to go. And we stuck those things actually on the wall so that we reminded ourselves about them every day. And we put a section in the middle that said, this is how we're getting there. This is how we're doing on our journey. So thinking back to that first conference that I went to, what did we learn there that we had to do, myself and the team that went there? So we learned 3 things. We learned about making improvement important, making it everyone's job, not making it someone's responsibility, and then really about empowering team to make changes. And you can see how all those things are linked. But if we learned that was what we had to do, sometimes what we actually do is different. We intend to do those things, but what we actually do is quite different. So in terms of making improvement important, I told my team we were going to be using the Shingo Model. We created our own Optos production system because that would be a thing that most manufacturing organizations do. But the team didn't really understand those things. The Shingo Model had a name, therefore it was an initiative. So if you just keep your head down, it'll go away. And they didn't really understand the Optos production system, what it meant or how it was relevant. In terms of making it everyone's job, I really focused on people who weren't on board, trying to convince them that this was the right thing to do, trying to wear down their resistance. And we adopted not just 5 S's, but 6 S's. We added safety as our first S, and we ran cross-functional 6 S events to try and show that it was everyone's job. And those things didn't really work either. The things that the responses that I got back were, not everyone's doing it, why should I bother? Or, you know, success is just tidying up someone else's mess. It's not a mess that I made. I'm not interested. And in terms of empowering the team, how do you do that? So I would tell people to feel empowered. I empower you to go and do stuff. And we developed a Kaizen suggestion system, which was a card-based system to capture good ideas. And people told me they didn't know how to do stuff. They didn't have time to do it, which I guess for everybody is always a big thing. The interesting one was the Kaizen suggestion system. I think the team really felt like they had a voice, that they were able to input their suggestions, that those suggestions all had the same value, regardless of the return on investment of that suggestion, they all had the same value. So why was it that they really connected with that though? What was the thing that we had done that made that Kaizen suggestion system work? And looking back on it, we made it easy to do the right thing. And we heard one of the speakers this morning talk about that, making it easy to do the right thing. No one comes to work to do the wrong thing. If we make it easy to do the right thing and more difficult to do the wrong thing, people will do the right thing. And we can see how that's linked to feeling empowered. So as we carry on, we get to, we think, right, we're going to continue to make it easy to do the right thing. So we did some teaching of the tools with the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service. We improved the Kaizen suggestion system from being a card-based system to an electronic system. We established Kaizen Tuesdays, which was committing time every Tuesday from 9:30 to 11:30 to work on improvements only. And we put wheels on everything to make ourselves more flexible and make it easier to move things around and reconfigure the shop floor. And that really got a lot of traction as well. We got people asking, when will I get my training? But I have to tell you, the hardest thing I ever did was Kaizen Tuesdays. It's easy to say, I'm going to give everybody 2 hours a week to make improvements. It's much easier to continue. It's much more difficult to continue to commit to that time in the last week of the month, and the last week of the quarter, and the last week of the year. But actually, that was one of the things that I really had to do, was when people gave me a million reasons why they shouldn't be doing Kaizen time this Tuesday, to say, no, this is really important. It's important, as important as everything else that we do. So the next year, I went to the next Shingo conference. Very similar reaction from me personally. Loved it again. I obviously had been on a 12 months worth of a journey and was looking to understand maybe some more subtle things as we went into that conference. And I heard a gentleman speak, and about engagement, and he drew a graph like this. And he talked about 20% of your organization being highly engaged, and 20% being disengaged, and 60% being on the fence, waiting to see who won. And what he said was, stand up if you're working with the 20% of people in that red area, and that's where you're focusing most of your time. So I stood up, as did the majority of the people in the room. And he said, that's why you're getting it wrong, because those people who are disengaged are winning in terms of how much of your time that they get. And so the people who are on the fence see no benefit to themselves. And we heard the previous speakers talk about what's in it for me. There was nothing in it for them to be engaged, because they were getting none of your time. There was a lot invested in being disengaged, because they were getting all of your time. And that was a really, really sort of pivotal moment for me, and really easy thing to do. I came back and I essentially ignored the people who were disengaged. As long as they didn't get in my way and stop us from doing things, I didn't let them halt progress. And I spent time with the people who were engaged. And I also decided at that point that actually making it someone's job, making those people who were engaged more important in the organisation, hopefully would have an impact. So I actually appointed some lean engineers at that point in time. We created a group called the Lean Foundations. Those are the people in the highly engaged group who were passionate. I had one lady who's really passionate and really organised. So she was our success champion. I had someone else who was a visual management champion, all that kind of thing. And we created that Lean Foundations group. But I still pressed on with the success audits because I personally believed that that was really important, to organise our workplace. So what happened there? The team told me success was still just tidying up, but they actually really got engaged with the lean engineers and lean foundations. So why was that? Why did making it someone's job actually help to make it everybody's job? And the reason for that is because we built a support structure that helped to make it everyone's job. So we can see how that's connected to making it everyone's job, and how that support structure is really connected to making it easy to do the right thing. So we're carrying on and thinking, how do we make it important? So we're making it important by valuing the individuals who are the early adopters, but how do we make it important for everyone? How do we make it important to be connected into that programme? So this is a picture, well, it's a series of pictures. It's before iPhones had the panoramic picture view of my reception area. 2 years on from when we started, that was taken in November 2011. It was dull and uninviting and totally given over to visitors. So it was a place for visitors to sit when they were waiting for someone to come and speak to them. And the sad fact of the matter is we never had any visitors. There was nothing good to come and see. There was nothing inspirational to come and see on our shop floor. So we took the decision to actually give this over to informing and engaging the team that worked in the manufacturing facility. That front door there in the middle picture was the door everyone comes into work through. They go home through that door. If they needed to go to the canteen, into the office area, to the toilet, they walk through that area multiple times a day. So we decided to make that a place where we communicated with our staff. So that was what we changed our reception area into. The wall that you can see on the right-hand side of the picture there actually has our top-level corporate vision, our goals, corporate goals and objectives for the next 3 to 5 years, our corporate objectives for the next 12 months, linked to our departmental objectives for the next 12 months. And then the part at the bottom there was the metrics that we were using to help show how we were driving towards achieving our objectives as a department, therefore how that was driving towards our corporate objectives for this year and for the next 3 to 5 years. At that same time, we also started publishing something called the Lean Journal, which was up on the wall there as well. The Lean Journal was all about how we'd improved things. It was celebrating our successes. It had some, guest thought leadership pieces in it. It had a lot of other information, but it was all about continuous improvement. It was never about how many things that we'd made. It was always about the ways that we improved to make them. And to start off with, the team didn't really understand what the metrics meant. They didn't know if anybody else was really interested in any of those things, but they really did connect with that wall and with the Lean Journal. And so when we look at that and say, why was that the case? It was really because it focused on behaviours, not results, which was something that I had heard right at the start of the journey. It's something that's, like I said, is embedded right in all of the principles. But those things really were helping us focus on behaviours and not results. And we can see how that's connected to all the other things that we learned how to do. So focus on behaviours, not results. So let's look at those behaviours again. So we started off with making sure we understood our customers' needs and expectations and looked at how we saw ourselves. And we created systems and processes to involve our employees, to encourage them to explore new ideas without fear of failure. And we clearly communicated the direction and the purpose of the organisation to everybody. I had inherited a team who would engage with what we made. They knew what we made a difference to people they didn't know every day, but they didn't feel that the organisation valued them. And so we changed that round. And by doing those things and being able to set goals that are connected to the organisation's goals and show how they were linked, we managed to fix a whole bunch of other stuff. And at the same time, we also managed to maintain that ability to avoid having too much product, that more than was necessary to meet the customer demand. But this time, we had the ability to meet the customer demand on time, every time. So thinking a bit about those results, I said it was about focusing on behaviour and not results, but we are all interested in the results because we know that we get the results if we focus on the behaviours. So in 10 years, we implemented approximately 1.5 good ideas every working day. we completed more than 600 improvement projects. And even when I left at the end of 2019, we still had more than 90% engagement in our continuous improvement. In that 10 years period, we increased our capacity by an order of magnitude. So just to put into that into perspective, in October 2009, we were making about 30 devices a month. When I left, we were making well in excess of 300 a month. In fact, some months even up to 350 a month. But I only increased headcount by a third. So we made it easier to make our product. We did things like reduce the first, when products first came into the shop floor and they were taking 200 hours to manufacture. In less than a year on one particular product, we'd got that down to 20 hours in less than a year. So we got to 10% of what his original launch value was at the end of that first year. And I didn't increase the amount of space at all. We still made it in the same space because we become organised, engaged, and a self-learning organisation. And looking back at that team in that world-class medical device manufacturing workplace, how did it change? It changed from looking like that into something that looks like that, organised. Everyone understands the flow, self-learning. So really, really different. And again, looking at the warehouse, which looks like the end scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, that warehouse changed into an organised warehouse where it was a pleasure to work. I don't work there anymore. I came to NMIS, as I said, at the beginning of last year. So does NMIS need cultural change? NMIS was started, NMIS has grown from an advanced form and research centre, which was established in 2009. It had a project in 2019, which established a lightweight manufacturing centre. So we have those two specialist centres. Last year, we launched another 2 specialist centres, our digital factory and our manufacturing skills academy, and together alongside a commercial group that works across all those specialist centres and my operations group, together we make NMIS. So NMIS needs cultural change because when you look at that organisation, I know what I joined NMIS, but there are people who joined a specialist centre. They're niche experts in forging and forming. They're valued for the expertise that they have. They didn't join an NMIS and they're not interested necessarily in an NMIS. So in this list of behaviours, if I started there at Optos, is that where I'm going to start here at NMIS? So the answer to that is no. We moved up a few behaviours because what we knew was that we don't have a clear direction and purpose for our organisation. We don't have people coalesced around one organisational goal, vision and mission. So we started developing that vision with all of the staff here. To date, we've run workshops with 220 of our 250 staff. There was 28 separate teams, all facilitated by our senior management team here. And we also worked with all of our stakeholders, of which you can see we have many, to create a vision for NMIS going forward. And we developed a vision, which is together transforming the future of manufacturing. And you'll see that that vision is very closely aligned to that description of NMIS that was there right from the very beginning. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully I'll be invited back in a couple of years to tell you how that journey's gone. But thank you very much for listening to me this morning. Thank you for inviting me to your conference. And I've probably left enough time for one question, Mary. I'm really sorry.
No, you're fine. We only have one question, so that's perfect. So they ask, as you grew in size in response to increased customer demand for your products, how did you ensure that you sustained your earlier gains in terms of your culture and behaviors?
So I think that's a really good question. So we grew in size by only by a third. But what we did do was we created an induction program for all new starts in our organisation that talked about our journey. Because what we understood was that everybody who'd been there from the start of the journey understood how much better it was, like how much opportunity you were being given to actually influence how we did things, as well as, you know, be involved in the products that we made. So we made sure that everybody who joined our organisation understood that journey, but also understood there was two parts to the role. One was to make the stuff, and the other one was to improve the ways of making the stuff. So we made it really important that they were engaged right from the start, and that they were actively encouraged within that support structure that I talked about to develop their own ideas.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate your
you.
time today.